Welcome to the podcast that puts a finger on the pulse of medicine and technology. On this show, you'll hear from investors, industry executives, and healthcare providers on the science and business of medicine. I'm your host, Omar Khateeb, and this is the state of MedTech. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. So this is a sales episode, more specifically if you are a medical rep and you are out in the field and covering cases and driving utilization and trying to sell product. This is really for you. The way you use your time can be used as a secret weapon. It can be used against you or it can be used for you. And so I want to cover how you can better utilize your time, which, it seems like a very boring topic, but this is extremely important. This is going to be, in my opinion, this is the difference between those who surpass quota and those who are just like barely getting by. Before I get started, of course, for those of you who may not know, I have a program called the Medical Sales and MedTech program. I have that program in this online training where I work with individuals from sales reps to VPs to CEOs on how do you commercialize and sell at scale. Persuade and scale I have a free webinar training that you can check out. You get a lot of great tactics for free just in that training. I highly encourage you to check it out. So check at the bottom of the notes here, and you'll see a link for that. Or you can even go to my LinkedIn profile, go to my featured section. You'll see the webinar there. So the day in the life of a rep. So this was a PDF that was put together by a former graduate of the Medical Sales College for their activities in a single working day. Now, let me give you the breakdown of the summary, okay? 34% is spent on case support. Okay, that makes sense. Case preparation and administrative work, so preparing for a case like going to a procedure and everything. Admin work can be updating the CRM or Salesforce, answering emails, etc. That's admin work. 18%, okay? So if we take those two numbers, so case prep and admin work plus case support, that's 34 plus 18, we have 52%. So that's half the time. You ready for the kicker? 41% is spent driving or on, quote, downtime. And I'm going to break that down for you more and tell you what to do with it and how you can fix it. Why is this concerning? Well, because only 7% is spent selling, right? And you can consider selling as prospecting, doing demos, having meetings, driving utilization, driving adoption. And why is this concerning? Well, if you think about it statistically, everyone's quota has gone up. And I've been doing a bunch of live webinars. I always survey and poll people. So on average, everyone's quota, whether you're an orthopedic rep, you're in biotech or pharma, has gone up at minimum 10% each quarter, right? I've talked to people in the ortho recon space whose quota has gone up to 18 to 25%. So if you have that big of a jump in quota and you have only 7% of your time dedicated to that, forget 7%. I spent a year in SaaS. The people who are in SaaS, 100% of their time was selling, doing meetings, doing demos, closing deals. And so as a medical sales rep, this is why I feel medical sales is the hardest sales job on the planet Earth. You don't have 100% of your time just to be selling, right? You're covering cases, you're making sure the utilization is happening. And so here's where I'm not going to go through all of this, but the breakdown, and I'll leave a link to the article that I'll publish. Here are the things that I see. Driving to the hospital, support a case, 45 minutes to register in the hospital rep track system. God, that sucks. I feel bad for reps who have to deal with this. 15 minutes, right? So all these things make sense, right? But let me, I actually went and pulled, I went deeper into the numbers because they kind of stopped there. They just kind of put this summary together and put the details. I went into the details. Always remember, the details are your friends, right? That, as the saying goes, the devil's in the details. Go into the details. You'll find the truth there. And so what did I find? So when I dive in, and I'm trying to pull up pull up the data right now on my screen. When I went into the details, here's where it breaks down. Let's look at the driving and downtime, which was 41%. Okay. It was divided between two things: waiting and driving. Waiting, 45 minutes waiting for a case to start, 60 minutes waiting for another case to start, 30 minutes waiting for a prospective surgeon to finish clinic. So just waiting in the operating room or in the office, right? So let's add that up. That's 45 plus 60 plus 30. That's 135 minutes divided by 60. That's 2.25 hours. So almost 2.5 hours spent just literally waiting. Okay. What about driving? 45 minutes to the hospital, 15 minutes drive to the surgeon's office, 30 minutes drive to a rural hospital, 15 minutes drive to a prospective surgeon's office, 40 minutes to the final hospital, and then 45 minutes driving home where you're stuck in traffic. That's 190 minutes divided by 60. That's 3.1 hours. So 3 hours spent just driving, okay? Let me tell you what you're going to do with that time. If you listen to what I tell you right now, your career will change, right? Because of how you utilize that time. The key to time travel, and that's right, I said time travel, is figuring out, one, documenting where your time is being wasted and how do you leverage that time. That's the only way to get it back. Because think about it. Let's look at a quarter, okay? So let's say that's let's not even say that's the hour. Let's say the average for this rep. So we say it's 2 hours. 2 hours a day, and this day was spent waiting. I'm going to be really lenient here. I'm going to say 1 hour. So let's say on average, it's 1 hour a day that this rep is spent waiting, right? Waiting for a case to start, waiting for to meet a surgeon. Let's just say all that accumulates to 1 hour. And let's say that rep, okay, is covering cases and doing all this. Let's say 3 times a week, okay? 3 times a week, which, by the way, it's usually more than that, but let's just say 3 times a week. So we take 3 times a week, right? How many hours is that a month? That's 12 hours a month, okay? How many hours is that a quarter? That's 36 hours. So the way you need to think about this is literally you're wasting a day and a half waiting. A day and a half. Imagine if so instead of waiting, what if every minute of that hour wasted was spent on a revenue generating activity? Imagine that. Imagine all your energy is put into one task for a day and a half. What would you be able to accomplish? This is the kind of thing you have to think about. Look, I started my own business literally from nothing 6 months ago. How did that happen? I looked at my time and where it was being wasted. I figured out how to leverage a certain time a day. That hour or two accumulates and compounds over time. And so within a year, I had about, I think, 20 heavily focused days accumulated of time on one task, which is how do I start my business, right? So when it comes to waiting, here's what I want you to do. You have to be a student of the game. You have to get intelligence on your prospects. So first, if be on LinkedIn and be active on there. I would also consider opening a Twitter. You don't have to tweet, just open one up. And many of you probably have Instagram and perhaps even TikTok. If not, you don't have to have these apps, but at least be able to navigate them, through Google. Search your surgeon. So step number 1, search the surgeon. Okay, look them up on Instagram, look them up on Twitter, look them up on LinkedIn. I guarantee you, between them or their office, they're going to have content. Go through and look at that content. What are they writing about? What are they interested in? What kind of engagements do they have, right? That gives you some ideas of what their interests are. The next thing, go and Google their name. Go to Google Scholar, okay? Google their name and read what are the last 2 or 3 papers they wrote. Okay, and when you find a paper, all right, I've written papers in the past. I actually have one. I'm a first author on one publication, believe it or not, in epidemiology from like 10 years ago when I was in medical school. When you read a paper, don't read the full thing. This is where many people, they make a mistake. People don't know how to read papers. They don't know how to read books. You never read, and I'm the guy who had a book show for 3 years, and I'm bringing that back, by the way. You never read a book cover to cover. It's, especially a business book. You don't do that. You get what you need. So with these research papers, you go in, start by reading the abstract, which gives you the full summary of the paper of what you're about to learn. Read the intro, because the intro is just a great compilation of whatever it is you're about to read about. Let's say it's let's say it's cabbages, right? It'll give you a history and background of the pathology, the physiology, the technology that's in cabbage, that's used for cabbages, right? It gives you a great interest. So you're adding to your knowledge base. Then skip the study designs, skip the methods. You don't need to read any of that. Go straight to the discussion. What do the authors have to say about their findings, right? Now you're learning to think like a clinician. And of course, when it comes to the conclusion, they're going to give some recommendations, right? So you're learning about this surgeon's background, right? Okay. From there, I always recommend to find a physician, don't go to the social media platform, right? So like when I'm looking for a surgeon on LinkedIn, I rarely go to LinkedIn because there's one company that became $1 trillion company through search, and that's Google. So go to Google, type in the physician's full name with their professional designation. So for example, if they're a DO, right? And FACS stands for FACS, Fellow American College of Surgeons, right? Put in their full name. So let's say Dr. Jane Smith, DO, FACS, and then the social platform you want to check, LinkedIn, then Twitter, and go to their profiles. Look at what they're doing. What are they saying? What are they talking about? Because not only, let's say you find them on LinkedIn, connect with them on LinkedIn, because the moment you're connected with them, they're going to know your name, your face, right? And if you are active on LinkedIn, they'll start seeing your posts about your technology, about yourself. That's how you start developing a relationship without even talking to the surgeon, right? They start to know you before they meet you, right? So that way you're not just another random rep, okay? Plus, even if they don't log into LinkedIn very often, right? The moment you get connected with them, you have access to their personal contact information. So while other reps are, let's say, using a work email, which is going to get hit by spam filter and firewall, you have their personal email and sometimes even their cell phone. Don't abuse that. But one great tactic that I would use is that, and I've used this, believe it or not, the former head of the FDA, I did this with, right? And I've done this with many other like heavyweight physicians, which is I'll connect with them on LinkedIn. The moment I'm connected with them, I go look at their contact information. Normally, because they use their personal, I'll see their personal email, I'll see their mobile phone. Sometimes they put their home address on there. Sometimes they have, other things like their Twitter handle, website or whatever, but sometimes there's personal stuff on there. So a lot of times I will take their cell phone, I will call them, they'll answer, and I'll say, hey, Dr. Smith, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm actually, you and I are connected on LinkedIn. My name's Omar. I only have a few minutes. So again, I immediately introduce who I am, how they know me, so it's not doesn't sound like a telemarketing call, and I put a fake time frame. Hey, I only got a few minutes, right? And then I'd say, I just wanted to let you know, I don't think you're aware of it, your personal information, your mobile phone, and whatever else is visible on LinkedIn. I'm gonna send you an email to your personal email with a link that'll show you how you can hide that. And I'll go on LinkedIn and find you can just Google how to hide my contact information on LinkedIn. Just send them that link. But now you've established this relationship where you've helped them. Just you're providing value outside your product. You've created that first impression in a positive way. Versus what do most reps do? They create the first impression by doing what? Driving, sitting awkwardly in the waiting room for 45 minutes, and the doctor knows that they're there, and then the doctor's thinking, God, what does this person want? Like, what am I going to tell them? And and that's a negative impression, right? So go on LinkedIn, connect with them. Go on Twitter. A lot of surgeons, they're tweeting their cases, but unlike LinkedIn, it's very hard to grow on Twitter. I was able to have at the time I had a podcast with the company I was at Petro Medical, the president and CEO of Penn Med, right? The University of Pennsylvania's entire health system. I was able to message him directly and get him on a podcast. Why? Because unlike LinkedIn, where he has tens of thousands of followers, on Twitter he would tweet. 2 or 3 people engaged with the tweet. I went and liked a few tweets, retweeted them, then I sent them a message on Twitter. The key is, how do you get in front of these people without physically going there, first, right? Because that's going to compound over time. Think of it like this. If I'm a rep and I'm covering, let's say, West Texas, I can't be everywhere at once. But using digital media, I can have a first touch with all my target prospects within an hour, right? And again, is every single doctor on social media? No, they're not. But I guarantee you there's a much higher percentage of success for you using the internet, using social media, than trying to physically drive to these places, right? Like, I'm not telling people to use social media and digital in replacement of physical meetings. I'm not saying that at all. I'm a big fan of physical meetings. You can engage with the person better. You can sense, you can see body language, all kinds of things. You have to add this to your arsenal of tools. This has to be an augmentation, right? So that's what you can be doing in that time when you're waiting. Let's say waiting for a surgeon, waiting for a case, which is gathering intelligence, reading, preparing, educating yourself, and then engaging, right? And the other thing is that, think of it like this. Aside from their papers, a lot of physicians have written articles, they've been on some podcast, or they've done a video or something. Go and see, how do they talk? What language do they use? If you go on LinkedIn, this is the biggest persuasion tactic I can share. I'll share many of them, but go on there and read how they describe themselves. Go to their recommendations. How do they write about other people? Because then you can find words that you can use in your talk track to them. You see, when people describe things, we describe things in one of three ways, okay? Kinesthetic, meaning physical, auditory, right? Or visually. Think about your in sales. What are the things you often hear? Sometimes you hear people say, "Hey, we gotta get a handle on this problem. We gotta push it through." Right? That's a kinesthetic. That's kinesthetic communication. Hey, I'm not hearing a solution here. We gotta listen. We gotta listen for the opportunities. That's auditory. I can't see a way through this. Look, we gotta look for the solution to this. We gotta look for the right targets. That's visual. When it comes to persuasion, and specifically hypnosis, hypnotists, this is what they do, right? Which is they induce hypnotism through language. And by the way, all of you who are listening have been hypnotized at some point. What happens when you listen to music? You go through a little bit of hypnosis. So look for the language that they use, because then instead of sounding like a sales rep, not only do you sound more like a peer, you sound like them. It's magic when this happens, believe me. So, again, let's just say the selling, let's say you can't do anything about that 7% that I showed. That's what most people have. Let's pretend 7% of their time is spent selling. You can't move that. So what are you going to do? You have to prepare so that the one time you got a chance to talk to the surgeon at the scrub sink or at that cafeteria or at a conference, whatever, you really take advantage of that and you make a strong impression, okay? Now, that's on the waiting side, okay? And by the way, for those of you who, enjoy this podcast and everything, I just want to take a quick moment. This only takes a second. If you're enjoying this, take a second. If you're on Spotify, scroll to the top, give this podcast 5 stars. If you're on iTunes, scroll to the bottom, give it 5 stars, and make sure to write a review. Just a few sentences. It would mean the world to me, okay? And for those on Spotify, you may not know this, you can actually submit questions to me. I do polls and questions, so just look at the bottom of this episode. You have an option to do that, so I'm going to have a poll there for you guys, okay? Now, let's look at the other side, driving. You can't get around this, right? So what do you do in the car? Do not waste your time listening to music. This is a waste of time. Like, remember, that's 3 hours a day spent driving, okay? So again, let's use math as our friend. For the rep who, let's just say, is out on the road covering cases 3 times a week, that's 3 hours a day times 3 times a week. That's 9 hours a week times 4. That's 36 hours a month times 3 again. That's 108 hours a quarter. Let's divide that by 24. That's 4.5 days. 4.5 days, my friends, 4.5 days that you're driving. You're in the car in traffic, right? Now, here's where I'm going to introduce you to what I like to call Automobile University. When you're during work hours, like for me, I work from home, but when I go out for a walk, I go to walking university. When I go in the car, it's Automobile University. You need to get in the habit of doing two things: listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts. You have to, because that way you're educating yourself. You're getting new ideas. You're learning, right? Think of it like this: you can go through a highly in-depth training on advanced sales skills easily in 4.5 days. The people who are in my program is pretty in-depth, and it covers not only LinkedIn, but it covers persuasion, psychology, network effects, advanced sales skills, and everything. It's a lot of content. One of the members of my program, Jacob McLaughlin, great, really successful rep. He turned over a dead territory in Medtronic within a year, and many of you probably know him from his work. He mentors a lot of people to get into medical industry. His handle, I think, is new to medical device sales. Right? He went through my entire program on a road trip, because he just puts it on. He's listening. Again, doesn't have to take notes, but then he gets exposed to it one time. Now he's going through it a second time. Again, doesn't need to take notes. He's just listening and getting exposed to new information. The most valuable thing that you can do in investing, and don't take my advice, this is Warren Buffett's advice, investing in yourself. When people asked Warren Buffett, like, what's your best investment at Berkshire Hathaway? People thought it might be Coca-Cola, it might be Apple and everything. He said, hands down, best investment I've ever made in my life was a public speaking course, which was the Dale Carnegie public speaking course, which, by the way, that is a great book. If you want a little bit of interesting history, the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which many of you heard, not only is it a great sales book, did you know that the CIA over, I guess it's 100 years now, in the early 1900s, used that book to train their intelligence agents? I bet you did not know that. That is very true. Or maybe not 100 years. I think the CIA was formed by Truman, so that was maybe 70 years ago or 80. But either way, CIA, the government intelligence agents, used that book. So my point, in your car, here's what you should be listening to. So for one, those of you who are listening to this episode, good on you. Look at the other episodes. Don't just focus only on sales. To get good at persuasion, you have to not only understand your customer, you have to become them, right? And so there's episodes in my podcast where I've interviewed other doctors, right? Listen to that. If you're in orthopedics, you should be listening to things like the Ortho Show with Scott Sigmund. Who's an orthopedic surgeon. Listen to how surgeons, they talk about things, even if it's unrelated to the products you sell. Because keep in mind, let's say you sell biologics, you should still understand why an orthopedic surgeon uses certain implants. What do they use for wound care? What do they use for rehabilitation? Because now you understand your customer. You're not just another rep. You're a trusted advisor. Take it even further. There's some really boring topics that nobody takes the time to understand, right? But if you do, man, does your value go up. One of those good examples, medical billing and revenue cycle management. There's plenty of podcasts on there. You can go listen to something or look on YouTube, and listen to it in the car just to get an idea of how it works, right? And you can add value to your office, right? Think of it like this: all these reps that have a surgeon, right? The office is not crazy about it, because all they do is, they'll show up. They just want to talk to the doctor. Maybe they need the office some food here and there. What if you learned about a little bit about medical billing, right? And by the way, you have to keep in mind, based on the company you work at, they may not like you doing these things, but screw it. Your company should not control your career. Listen to an episode, go to the office and say, hey, whoever the person is at the front desk, hey, John, hey, Sally, I'm not sure how medical billing is done here, but I listened to this really good episode, or I watched this great YouTube video that had some really good tips on improving medical billing. These are the things that I learned. And just mention to it and say, I'll shoot you an email with the link. Maybe you can check it out. You're adding value now, right? Learn about marketing. Learn these things in your car. If you want to start making more money, you have to improve your skills. This is why, even for those of you who know him, Grant Cardone, really famous salesperson, realtor. He has online coaching, everything. I think he's after Tony Robbins, he's the next most successful self-development guy. He's done, I know, over 900 million in sales. You know what he says? He tells people, do not invest in any of my real estate stuff. Don't do any of these things, until you have a certain amount in the bank, like I think 50 or 100K. He's like, all your money right now, especially earlier on, should be spent on income producing skills. So adding to your skill set, you need to focus on investing on elevating your skill set so that in the current revenue model you're in, you amplify and maximize it. You shouldn't be wasting your time trying to learn how to flip houses or sell things on eBay for a few bucks when you're not maximizing your income generating activities in your current job. This is the one dumb thing that I see a lot of med reps do. It's like, oh, I'm selling this on eBay. I'm doing this. Do that as a hobby. That's fun. But what are you doing? Because you're spending 70, 80% of your time every week in this one job. If you're not finding ways to maximize your income producing potential and your revenue and everything in that, you're making a huge mistake. So find that time in the car, right? If you don't know what to look up, hey, go look at my page. I constantly post a lot of things on new books, new episodes and everything. Do some research, talk to other people, talk to your customers. Hey doc, do you listen, can you recommend any podcasts, anything that I can check out for XYZ, whatever it is? Because then when you start learning these things, guess what? When you see that doctor, and he could be a prospective surgeon, I've gotten so many deals doing this. They know that I'm a great resource for anything that they want to learn. So they're like, hey, are you listening to any new podcasts? And I advise them. I'm like, yeah, what are you trying to learn? A lot of surgeons, for some reason, they want to learn more about sales. And I'm like, yeah, if you want to think about sales, I recommend understanding some basics in persuasion. Here's some episodes I recommend. Check this stuff out. Now you're adding value outside, right? And let's just say that surgeon, whatever, you can't get business from them. If you add value, and again, this is where using social media, let's say LinkedIn, to post and scale things is so valuable. Guess what? That person, you can go to them and say, hey, Dr. Smith, I know that my technology may not be a good fit for you at this time, or maybe we can't get in the hospital. Can you do me a favor? I'm trying to grow my business and do well. Is there anybody that you went to medical school with that you feel like would really like this technology that I can talk to? Is there anybody in this hospital or that hospital? Do you know any of these doctors? You don't need to make an introduction, but just maybe give me some advice on how I can get in front of them. So many times a surgeon will tell me, oh yeah, I know this person, I know that person. Don't worry about reaching out. Let me make an email intro. Let me give you their cell phone. Just tell them I gave it to you, right? Those are the things that happen. So you have to take advantage of your time. It's so important. And the last thing that I want to say is that when you're not driving, when you're not waiting, the other time that's wasted, okay, is this. What you're doing in the OR. Now look, I've covered so many cases myself as a rep, and I was doing robotic surgery. In my cases where if something goes wrong, it's 100% on me because the surgeon's not controlling the robot. I was having to send the robot, and this is in robotic spine surgery, to certain trajectories. Okay, my showtime, right, for when a spinal fusion is done, a spinal fusion may take 2 or 3 hours depending on the size of it, or 5 or 6, maybe 15, 20 minutes tops, right? Maybe even 30 minutes. Outside of that, I'm just hanging out in the room. I know for a fact, especially you implant reps, don't BS me and say that you're in there, you're having to pay attention to every single thing that's going on, right? You take your phone out, you play with it, that's fine. Use your phone as a tool to help you learn more and to persuade at scale. Get on LinkedIn, start going through cases, get on Twitter, go through cases, read, and then engage. Because then, by the time that case is done, you leave, you might have made a positive impression on 5, 10, 15 new surgeons. You do a post that you get a few surgeons to like and comment on, even though it might have 2 or 3 likes, guess what? Their entire network saw them like this post. They all know your name. This is how I made a name for myself within the surgical community just in a few years, right? Take this advice I'm giving you. Please take it. Take action on it. Use these. Take them. Make them yours. I'm begging you, right? If you do these things, not only will you see an improvement in your sales and in your business, in your current role, you will get the attention in a positive way of other companies, of recruiters. And For those of you who are worried like, oh, my employer's not going to like that, if you do a great job where you're promoting your products on LinkedIn, you're also adding value by talking about new surgical techniques, clinical papers, these things, and you're getting surgeons to engage, the company's going to love you. Your manager can be like, man, why don't we have more of our team like this person, right? So I hope this was helpful. Take the advice, put it into action. Again, don't forget, if you want to learn more, you want to get some free strategies, check the notes below or check my LinkedIn for that free webinar. Go take advantage of it, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye, guys.